We have a unique nation, a republic, like no others. And so this must be unique. This will be our nation's capital.
Clearly, a lot of the designers and architects of Washington, D.C. were Masons, starting with George Washington himself, who was a guiding force.
I do not believe that there are any secret plans or designs related to Freemasonry.
Well, it was definitely designed according to Masonic principles. The streets are laid out that way. The buildings are laid out that way.
Conspiracists are always looking under their bed for evidence that there is some vast conspiracy.
Masons may very well say that they really aren't influential as far as Washington, D.C. is concerned, and yet the cornerstone was laid by Masons.
You see in the inverted five-pointed star, which is the goat of Mendes, built into the streets of Washington, D.C.
No, there are no satanic plans in the street plans of Washington, D.C.
There is a pentagram to the north of the White House.
But the streets don't actually connect to form a pentagram. This is geometry. It happens.
No one could have that happen accidentally.
The anti-Masons want to show that there is some demonic conspiracy.
It's Baal worship. That's what you're involved in.
That is what Masonry is based upon, the power of the dragon.
In a word, hogwash.
When you want to talk about symbols and what they mean, you really have to look at who's authored these symbols.
With symbols, there are always multiple levels. Symbols reveal and they conceal. And that's why they're used, and that's why they're so important. They reveal to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. If I would have told you this 15 years ago, I might have gotten shot.
When they're shooting at you, you know they're serious.
No, I can't. Sorry, the president's house needs to turn 180 degrees. It's just
180
degrees? Absolutely. There's absolutely no way we can compromise.
Throw the entire thing out.
Oh, happily.
This area
I
here,
beg your pardon.
This is not going to work.
This is not going to work.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right.
You have had enough. Thank you.
From its beginning, the design for Washington, D.C. has been a source of conflict and heated debate. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, a temperamental French architect, a famous African American, and a mysterious surveyor would set in motion a project that would span the next 150 years, with no end of controversy in sight. But beyond debates at an internal level, the very layout of the city is continually under suspicion. Arcane symbols and mythological designs, both inside and outside government buildings, have caused many to wonder if the city somehow represents an agenda. This becomes increasingly important as America's current place on the world stage ignites firestorms of controversy. As the United States is the most powerful nation on earth, many have wondered, what is America up to? Could the purpose of operations currently carried out by the U.S. government somehow be reflected in the design of its capital city? At the center of controversy are secret societies. Many of America's leaders have belonged to them right from the nation's beginning. Our current president, George W. Bush, has admitted to his membership in the mysterious Skull and Bones Society.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322?
Skull and Bones has to be the most powerful, one of the darkest of all secret societies that exists on this planet. It is about greed and it is about power.
The idea for Skull and Bones is said to have come out of Germany in the early part of the 19th century. The society was founded at Yale University by William Huntington Russell, along with Attorney General and Secretary of War Alphonso Taft, whose son, William Howard Taft, would go on to become America's 27th president. Some believe the Society's foundation demonstrates a clear link with what may be the oldest society of all, Freemasonry. The Society is shown here in 1993, reenacting the laying of the cornerstone for the United States Capitol on the 200th anniversary of the event.
Know all of you who hear me, we proclaim ourselves free and lawful Masons, true to the laws of our country, professing to revere God and to confer benefits upon mankind.
This is the ceremony in which Senator Strom Thurmond, himself a 33rd degree Mason, took part.
Senator Thurmond, we would like you to join in this.
Since the William Morgan incident in 1826, when Americans uncovered a secret cabal working inside the government, the presence of Masonry in places of power has always sparked debate. But their influence in American government is undeniable.
This is the same Bible upon which Presidents Clinton, Bush, Carter, and George Washington were inaugurated president.
Of America's 43 presidents, at least 15 are confirmed Masons, though some say the number is even greater. In addition to the Capitol, the Freemasons have laid the cornerstone for every major building in Washington, D.C.
Srčane bolesti, probavni i metabolički problemi, gojaznost i šećerna bolest dovode do teških stanja. Ako imate sličnih bolesti, spriječite rizik. Pobijedite bolesti prirodnim putem, korištenjem paketa hrane. Immunoplex, paket hrane, je pokazao fantastične rezultate u regulisanju šećera, težine, holesterola, triglicerida i drugih poremećaja. Koliko je jak vaš imunitet? Želite li poboljšati zdravlje prirodnim putem? Ekstrakt lišća žitarica folivita je najbolja sunčeva infuzija dostupna čovjeku. Folivita je idealna dopuna ishrani sa maksimalnim efektima u revitalizaciji i jačanju organizma.
Izaberite prirodan i bogat izvor minerala, vitamina i enzima u pakovanju folivite.
Folivita, najbolje iz prirode. Bogatstvo minerala, vitamina i enzima u pakovanju folivite možete naručiti na telefone 051 214 145 ili 065 681 366.
Ako imate problema sa viškom kilograma, krvnim pritiskom, probavom, cirkulacijom, dijabetesom i drugim teškim stanjima, promijenite tok bolesti. Koristite biljne lijekove iz zelene apoteke, koji imaju fantastičan uticaj na vaše zdravlje. Pobjedite bolesti fito i dijetoterapijom uz stručne savjete ljekara. Kontakt telefoni 065 681 366 i 051 214 145.
The cornerstones of the President's house, known to us as the White House, the Washington Monument, the Smithsonian, Independence Hall in Philadelphia, incidentally by past Grandmaster Benjamin Franklin, and Constitution Hall stand out among many others as outstanding examples of cornerstones which have been laid Masonically. The cornerstone of the United States Capitol, however, stands out above all buildings erected in the free world as the seat of government for our people.
This bronze plaque, located inside the U.S. Capitol, marks the spot where the original cornerstone was laid by George Washington, the first American president and a Freemason.
George Washington is probably the most famous Mason in the world.
The George Washington Masonic Memorial is entirely dedicated to the idea of Washington as a Freemason.
Now, we do know that Washington participated in the laying of the cornerstone of the United States Capitol as a Masonic ceremony, and he wore his regalia as a Master Mason. And he laid the cornerstone and performed the ceremony of laying the cornerstone.
Washington's participation in the event was recorded by the newspaper of the time, the Columbian Mirror, which can still be obtained through the Library of Congress.
Laying the cornerstones of buildings which serve mankind is one of the world's most ancient customs.
The cornerstone laying ceremony predates Freemasonry, although its early symbolic purposes as a sacrifice to appease the gods or demons or whatever in prehistorical times. Of course, there's no application to why Freemasons do it. The corn, wine, and oil that we use for this are also ancient symbols.
Corn is the symbol of plenty, wine the symbol of refreshment, and oil the symbol of joy and gladness.
While Masonry maintains these symbols as a representation of blessing, there are some who believe they hold a more hidden meaning.
With symbols, there are always multiple levels, up to 7 different levels of interpretation with every particular symbol.
Corn is an important symbol in Masonry and is one found repeatedly in Washington, D.C. But what sort of hidden meaning could apply to corn? In Hebrew, the word for corn is Dagon, which became the name of a Babylonian god. Some believe this same god was adopted by the Phoenicians under the name Dagon. While Dagon was often worshipped as the fish god, he was also the god of corn. His son was known as Baal, who was often called the son of Dagon or the son of corn.
Now, corn, of course, if we're talking about pre-New World times, would be any grain or wheat.
To complicate matters further, in the Old Testament, we find the children of Israel offering corn and wine and oil to Yahweh, the God of the Bible. Yet at some point, God's anger was kindled against them for turning the sacrifice into idolatry. In the book of Hosea, God says of Israel, "She did not know that I gave her the corn and wine and oil, which they prepared for Baal." Notice again this Phoenician version of Baal, as a bearded man with strong features. Could Baal have been the model for the bearded male images that appear throughout Washington, D.C.? Take note of this image, with ears of corn carved into the hair. According to legend, Baal was once slain by the god of death and taken into the underworld. But at some point, he was resurrected, or as it is sometimes called, awakened. At Haynes Point in Washington, D.C., is found this mysterious statue of a bearded giant rising up out of the ground. Or perhaps out from his grave. The statue is called the Awakening. According to the Masonic Encyclopedia, another symbol for resurrection is the Egyptian obelisk, which is the shape of the Washington Monument. The word obelisk is sometimes translated Baal's shaft or the shaft of Baal. As a result, critics of Masonry argue that Baal, not Yahweh, is the real God to whom Masons perform their ceremony.
It's not until you get to the Royal Arts degree that all of a sudden you realize who God is or what the name of God is. It's hidden for a long time. In fact, you're told that there's this hidden word you're supposed to search for. But it's not until you finally get to that degree that you realize that His name is revealed.
It's believed that at the higher levels, the Masons secretly worship Baal under a hidden and unusual name.
As you go higher up in the Masonry, you learn the secret name of God, which is a secret and the lost word that the Masons in the Blue Lodge seek. They already know it. It's Jobulun. It's a combination of Jehovah, Baal, and Osiris. It's a deity that is not the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
But nowhere in that Scottish Rite degree, and I have to stress that this is an additional degree, this is not a part of regular craft Freemasonry, nowhere in that additional degree is there ever any suggestion that Jubulon is the name of a god. What it is a amalgam of three different words, which in ancient languages was the word for God.
Coyle's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, he admits on page 516 that Jebulon is basically a composite of three different names of different gods. Je, meaning Jehovah, or the Syriac name of God, as he says. And then Baal, or he says Bel, B-E-L, or Baal, he spells it B-A-A-L, how the Bible spells Baal or Baal, it's pronounced in Hebrew, which is the Canaanite god. And then he gives On for the Egyptian god, referencing, many Masons reference Osiris. And it's interesting because when you look at what he's said there, he's admitting that the Masonic name for God includes Baal or Baal.
It's not intended to represent a god. Its only use in the ritual is as a password to gain entry to the lodge.
It's a demonic god, it's Baal worship, that's what you're involved in.
It is the word for God in three ancient languages, three ancient civilizations, and that's all it is.
The Mason is actually worshiping Baal, Jebulon, Je-Baal-on, and Osiris, and just using the name of Jehovah, which is also wrong because God warns not to use His name in vain.
Freemasonry is often attacked and accused of being a religion simply because it promotes a belief in God. But nowhere in the teachings of Freemasonry does it promote any specific attributes of God. See, belief in God is faith. Belief about God is religion.
From a biblical Christian standpoint, and as a Christian, I have to really take issue with this because there are many scriptures from Genesis to Revelation that condemn idolatry and worshiping other gods.
In Freemasonry, to make it easy for men of all faiths to meet together, we use the expression great architect of the universe. Now that's not a name, that's a description. Much the same as grand geometrician is a description of an attribute of God. Grand geometrician or great architect refers to his attribute as the great creator. But men of all faiths can accept that description of their God.
God warns about an admixture or a synergism or a synchronistic view of mixing different gods with His name, and that's something He's very clear about that we're not to do. In fact, it's interesting, Baal or Baal is depicted in the New Testament by the Jews as well as Jesus. He's called the ruler of demons. It's another name for Satan.
Most scholars agree that Baal became synonymous with the devil. Yet Masonry insists its view of God is without definition. For the Mason, the corn, wine, and oil ceremony might as easily be dedicated to Baal as to any other god. Nevertheless, the conflict between Masonry and its critics goes on.
Freemasonry is rationalist and humanist. It is not superstitious, and it is not involved in the occult.
A lot of Masons don't have a clue as to the fact that the Masonic God is basically Satan.
I think that's supremely arrogant of anyone who's not a Mason to believe they know more about Freemasonry than a Mason does.
May corn, wine, and oil and all the necessaries of life abound among the people of the world. And may this building be continued and preserved to the latest ages.
What do these things really signify? Could it be an occult ceremony representing some sort of demonic conspiracy, as some suggest? Or is it merely a harmless practice to honor an ancient tradition? To investigate these things, we first review the beliefs of the secret societies that came to America. It is clear that the arcane symbolism in Washington, D.C. begins with them.
When you want to talk about symbols and what they mean, you really have to look at who's authored these symbols, what was their intentions.
Well, I think it's obvious that anybody who has the eyes to see can see that Washington, D.C., and indeed many other state capitals are festooned with occult symbols.
Because these symbols come from the esoteric realm, it is important to define them according to the thinking of occult philosophers.
Symbols reveal and they conceal. And that's why they're used and that's why they're so important. They reveal to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And they conceal from those who do not have the eyes to see or ears to hear.
In the book, Masonic and Occult Symbols Illustrated, we find this quote from Masonic author Charles G. Berger, who says that symbols came to have two meanings, the esoteric and the exoteric. The esoteric meaning was the true or original meaning, understood only by a few and closely guarded by them. The exoteric meaning was the invented or modified explanation intended for the many. This practice dates back to ancient Egypt and is explained by Dr. Robert Hieronymus, a member of a secret society called Co-Masonry, and author of the book Founding Fathers, Secret Societies.
As with all secret societies, you have levels, and if you're on the lower levels, you don't even know they're upper levels. They don't even tell you. You bump into it by accident or someone comes along. Now, in Scottish Rite, that's something different, because they know that there's a... But before then, and basically secret societies such as, let's go to ancient Egypt. To the ancient Egyptians, the priest would tell the serfs, the guys that tilled the land, they would say, the sun is God, okay? And so they accepted that very low-level interpretation, all physical. That's not what the priest believed. What the priest believed, there was a second level. The priest believed that, nope, the physical sun is not the supreme being. It's the spirit which flows through the physical sun that is the supreme deity. However, there was another level, and the priests didn't even know it. It's those that were involved and elevated to if I would have told you this 15 years ago, I might have gotten shot. But this is now, I'm so glad now that this is easy to talk about. The third level, which is a higher level of understanding, said, nope, it's not, that's not the sun. The sun is not the supreme deity. Nope, yes, spiritual energies come through the sun. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the star Sirius.
The dog star.
The dog star, because the dog star was everything to the ancient Egyptians.
Sirius is said to have been the most important star in the ancient world. It was considered the brightest star in the heavens, many times brighter than the sun. The Great Pyramid was built to synchronize with Sirius, so that the light of this star would shine into the Queen's chamber, supposedly to cast a beam upon an initiate during a ritual.
Sirius is considered to be the dog star. It's considered to be the most evil star in the Egyptian pantheon. And the reason for this is because in ancient Egypt they depended on the Nile. And during the time when Sirius is in its ascendancy, which is in late July and early August, was the time of drought. It was a time when the Nile was at its most weak in terms of being able to be used for crops. And so the Egyptians thought this was a time of blasted blight, drought, and evil.
It seems strange then that Sirius should be related to the founding of America. According to Masonic author David Oveson, the Declaration of Independence was signed when the sun was in alignment with Sirius in July of 1776. It is, however, appropriate that Sirius should be related to the most Egyptian-styled icon in America's capital city, the Washington Monument. Oveson writes that in 1848, when the cornerstone of the Washington Monument was laid, the sun would have passed over Sirius. He goes on to say that in the course of the ceremonial, the star Sirius would have been seen on the eastern horizon. It would have been rising over the Capitol building to the east of the monument. The monument itself was originally designed by Freemason architect Robert Mills. Mills was trained by two fellow Masons, James Hoban, who designed the White House, and Benjamin Latrobe, who designed the U.S. Capitol. Mills' original design seemed to combine the whole pantheon of pagan mysteries, an Egyptian-style obelisk surrounded by a Roman colonnade with Greco-Roman looking statues all around it. According to the original plan, the monument should have been built directly south of the White House. But as with every plan, things change.
When they went to build it, and when they calculated what the weight of the monument was going to be, they determined that that precise spot, that the foundations and the bedrock at that precise location would not safely support the weight of the monument.
As a result, the monument was shifted slightly to the east. While it is not in a perfect alignment with the White House, it would end up in a perfect north-south alignment with the Masonic House of the Temple, which was built some years later. The construction for the Washington Monument began on July 4, 1848, with the laying of the monument's cornerstone by Freemasonic President James K. Polk. The project itself would take over 30 years to complete, during which time funding for the project would be scarce, the American Civil War would take place, and many ideas about the monument would develop. When the aluminum capstone was finally set on December 6, 1884, the end result would be a much simpler and more Egyptian figure than was first envisioned. The shift in design was the influence of George Perkins Marsh, the man considered the father of the modern environmentalist movement. In 1876, Marsh was the U.S. minister to Italy. While there, he spent years studying the many obelisks which had been brought from Egypt. It was he who realized that the height of a traditional Egyptian obelisk was approximately 10 times the base, causing the plan for the Washington Monument to be reduced from 600 feet to 555 feet. As for the colonnade and statues planned by Mills, Marsh wrote, "Throw out all the gingerbread of the Mills design and keep only the obelisk." While a true obelisk is fashioned from a single block of stone, the Washington Monument is made up of many stones. The hope of the Washington Monument Society was that the structure would reflect the idea of out of many, one. Meanwhile, the pyramidion at the top is made up of 13 levels, just like that of the pyramid on the Great Seal of the dollar bill. But mysteries abound with the monument, not the least of which is the presence of a 12-foot obelisk beneath a manhole just a few hundred feet away from the Washington Monument. It appears to be a miniature replica of the monument itself, but as to why it is there, no one seems to know. Yet like the pyramid on the US dollar, this obelisk is missing a capstone. Meanwhile, Masonic author David Oveson is convinced that the Freemasons who signed the Declaration of Independence on July 4th and who laid the cornerstone for the Washington Monument on that same date, would have been familiar with the rising of the Egyptian dog star Sirius, as it is an important symbol in Freemasonry.
Srčane bolesti, probavni i metabolički problemi, gojaznost i šećerna bolest dovode do teških stanja. Ako imate sličnih bolesti, spriječite rizik. Pobijedite bolesti prirodnim putem, korištenjem paketa hrane. Imunopleks, paket hrane je pokazao fantastične rezultate u regulisanju šećera, težine, holesterola, triglicerida i drugih poremećaja. Paket hrane možete naručiti na telefone 065 681 366. Koliko je jak vaš imunitet? Želite li poboljšati zdravlje prirodnim putem? Ekstrakt lišća žitarica folivita je najbolja sunčeva infuzija dostupna čovjeku. Folivita je idealna dopuna ishrani sa maksimalnim efektima u revitalizaciji i jačanju organizma.
Izaberite prirodan i bogat izvor minerala, vitamina i enzima u pakovanju folivite.
Folivita, najbolje iz prirode. Bogatstvo minerala, vitamina i enzima u pakovanju folivite možete naručiti na telefone 051 214 145 ili 065 681 366.
Ako imate problema sa viškom kilograma, krvnim pritiskom, probavom, cirkulacijom, dijabetesom i drugim teškim stanjima, promijenite tok bolesti. Koristite biljne lijekove iz zelene apoteke, koji imaju fantastičan uticaj na vaše zdravlje. Pobijedite bolesti fito i dijetoterapijom uz stručne savjete ljekara. Kontakt telefoni 065 681 366 i 051 214 145.
Interesting thing about all Freemasonry is that symbolism is ultimately very important. They don't put a lodge in the east because it's a nice place and it looks good. They put it in the east. The masters have put it in the east so because
it's the rising sun.
It's the rising sun. You're catching the energies of the light.
As Dr. Hieronymus revealed earlier, the real light shining in the east for the Egyptians was not merely the sun, but the light of the dog star, Sirius, which some believe holds a more sinister implication.
This dog star also has relations to the idea of modern-day ceremonial magic and modern-day masonry.
This was especially true for 20th century occultist and Freemason Aleister Crowley, who openly practiced ceremonial magic and was a member of a secret order called the Order of the Silver Star. The Silver Star was a reference to Sirius.
Masons teach that at the center of every Masonic lodge there's a five-pointed star right underneath the altar upon which the candidate is obligated. But the thing is, what they don't tell you is that five-pointed star represents Sirius, which is regarded as a satanic symbol.
There is perhaps no symbol that evokes occult suspicion like the figure of the pentagram, which from ancient times was associated with the dog star Sirius. Masonic philosopher Albert Pike wrote that Sirius still glitters in our lodges as the blazing star. The blazing star is an ancient Gnostic term for Sirius, and as shown here, is symbolized in Freemasonry by the five-pointed star or pentagram. According to Pike, this symbol in Masonry dates back to the pentalpha of the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. The pentalpha gets its name for the 5 alphas, or Greek letter A's, which make up its composition.
Typically in Freemasonry, you see the five-pointed star with the nose point down. Now, there's even a division in Masonry which considers this the evil side of Freemasonry as opposed to the non-evil side. For example, Freemasonic lodges in New York do not use the nose side down star. They turn it around so the nose is pointing up, and they consider that a good variety of Freemasonry.
Here is an upright Masonic star, which is another type of the blazing star mentioned earlier. Some believe this representation of Sirius may be the origin of the 5-pointed stars which adorn the American flag, as well as the stars that adorn the Statue of Freedom on top of the U.S. Capitol. Incredibly, these same 5-pointed stars were carved by Freemasons into the ceiling of Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland more than 500 years ago. Because Sirius is said to arise in the east, it also became known as the Eastern Star. To the Egyptians, Sirius was identified with the dog god Anubis, which is where the name Dog Star comes from. Anubis was said to have guarded the gates of death and was the protector of mysteries. Meanwhile, the Romans recognized Sirius as Janitor Letheus, or the keeper of hell. These dark associations may be the reason for the sometimes grim view of Sirius and the 5-pointed star that represents it. But Sirius was also associated with the Egyptian goddess Isis, and here, as we connect the dots, a more complete picture begins to emerge. For the Egyptians, the rising of Sirius in the east preceded the annual flooding of the Nile River, which for them was a magical event. It was also the time that the goddess Isis would appear and give birth to Horus, the divine child of the Egyptian Trinity. The all-seeing eye is also called the Eye of Horus, and in Freemasonry, Horus symbolizes the Masonic concept of a Christ. This is further represented by the hieroglyph used to denote Sirius. Notice the 3 symbols, an obelisk, a star, and a half circle. According to Egyptologists, the half circle is used to denote what is called the benben, or the capstone used to top the pyramids. Throughout all history, it has been said that the capstone to the Great Pyramid of Egypt has been missing, which is why the all-seeing eye of Horus floats in its place above the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. According to occult philosophers, the light which illuminates the eye comes not from the sun, but from the dog star Sirius, as is demonstrated by this illustration of the blazing star of Masonry, centered by an all-seeing eye. As Robert Balville writes, in many esoteric traditions, the return of the capstone of the Great Pyramid will signal the return of the Great Initiate, which, according to many prophecies, signifies the return of the Christ. Albert Pike describes the Masonic Trinity as expressed through Sirius and the symbols that are seen in most all Masonic halls. Notice this image with the sun on one side and the moon on the other, while the all-seeing eye sits in between with light blazing behind it. Pike writes that the sun and moon represent the 2 grand principles, the male and the female. Both shed their light upon their offspring, the blazing star or Horus.